Becoming is the domain of forms, of what is fabricated. Its central characteristic is that of flux. Being, by contrast, is formless and unchanging. To be in flux is to flow, to wander, to roam, to pass through. Becoming is characterized by incessant flux. In other words, no form is permanent. The Buddha taught that all forms are like lumps of foam. They're fleeting, temporary, impermanent. Similarly, feelings are like water bubbles. Perceptions are like mirages. Volitions are like fabrications consisting of endless layers without a core. In fact, persons too lack a core or an abiding self or soul or person. Instead, there's just a continual arising and passing away of aggregates that give the illusion of an abiding self or soul or person. The aggregates are qualities, properties, characteristics, commonalities. Consider a physical object, such as, say, a pebble. Abstract its properties from the pebble and imagine deleting its shape, size, color, texture, and so on. What would be left? Nothing. There is no substratum, nothing substantial that stands under or has the qualities. A pebble is just a cluster of qualities. A person, too, is like that. There is no abiding substratum that continues from one moment to the next that has qualities. If pins represent qualities and the pincushion is the substratum, there's no pincushion. If so, that explains why it's impossible to single out who you are as a person. Take away your past and future, and your story dissolves. There can't be a story, the autobiography of me, without time. At any moment, you are like a fleeting lump of foam. If you disagree, what's the pincushion? It's impossible to single out something that has no qualities. All forms lack an abiding essence, a continuant substratum. All forms are impermanent. The Buddha calls this impermanence. When applied to ourselves, it's the teaching of nonself. This is the explanation for dissatisfaction. Whoa, not so fast, you may object. Surely I have an abiding essence. Consider some fabricated object or other. Let's say a watch. Does a watch have an abiding essence, watchness? Well, no. A watch is just an organized set of its parts. If you remove its parts, you remove the watch. You can literally see that if you take a watch apart. You likely assume that you, though, are unlike a watch. You are a whole person. Machines like watches are not like living organisms. Living organisms are unities. A watch may ultimately just be a heap of its parts, but a person isn't. Really? Nobody denies that you seem to have the sense of an abiding self. What appears, though, is not always what is real. It's helpful to think of 5 aggregates that compose a person. The property of being material or bodily. Sensations, which are the feelings that arise when our senses contact some sensory object. For example, the pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral scent that arises when we smell something. Perceptions, which are the singlings out of the objects of sight, sound, smell, and so on. Fabrications, which are the fashionings of perceptions into physical objects, such as the tasting of, say, an apple or a scallop. The property of consciousness itself that is focused on or about, say, the taste of an apple or a scallop. The episode of consciousness is in the tasting. The rapid and continual unfolding of these aggregates is what results in our sense that we are an abiding self or person. There's nothing wrong with this process. It's perfectly natural. The problem comes only when we cling to it. Why? Since the reality is there's no thing to cling to, the process of clinging always fails and creates dissatisfaction. Clinging occurs only in the domain of becoming, only in the domain of forms and fabrications. Since all forms are temporary, since there's no such thing as an abiding form, all attempts at clinging fail and produce dissatisfaction. Don't you understand this already? You probably learned this lesson at least by the time you were a teenager. You fell in love with S, someone. If you were unsuccessful in consummating your love for S, your falling in love was a great source of dissatisfaction. If you were successful in consummating your love for S, you lived in fear of losing S, which was also a great source of dissatisfaction. In other words, the problem was that you were trying to cling or attach. In truth, of course, falling in love isn't love at all. Compare my book, Love and Respect. What you were really doing was trying to use S to create lasting satisfaction for yourself. How'd that work out? It didn't. In fact, it couldn't. It never does. Since all forms are impermanent, it is extreme foolishness to try to attach to any of them with the hope of gaining permanent satisfaction. Wake up! Stop trying to gain some form, something impermanent that's a fabrication that will provide you with lasting satisfaction. It's childish, it's foolish, it's immature. You'll just stay bound as you grow old with all your dissatisfactions intact until you finally die unsatisfied. The alternative is unbinding, freedom. It goes with being, the unfabricated. So what's the cure for binding? The perpetual clinging or attachment that only perpetuates dissatisfaction? Living fully in the present moment, cultivating present moment awareness. That's readily available. It always has been. In other words, avoid thinking of living well as gaining some future good such as wisdom or spiritual enlightenment. It's not. There's nothing to gain. The future is not real. Waking up is now. It's present moment detachment, letting go, the dropping of all clinging. To become unbound is to eradicate infatuation, hostility, and delusion. Put it this way, at this very moment, you are already awake, unbound. The problem is that you've never realized it. Realizing it requires mastering some practice or skill that yields moment-to-moment awareness, as opposed to staying lost in thought. You are infinitely valuable. You are whole and complete. To realize that is to wake up, to realize that you already are everything necessary for living well. There's nothing else we need to do. The mind, which is the whole set of thoughts, is always dissatisfied with the present moment. It's a very important insight to realize that our egoic minds are never satisfied with what is right now. That's why the essence of the practice is accepting what is as it is right now. We don't have to like it, but we do have to accept it if we want peace. It's not our ability to think that is the problem. It's our misuse of that ability that is the problem. Some of our thoughts, perhaps 10 or 20%, are useful, fresh, and creative. It's the other 80 or 90% that are obstructive, boring, and stale. Think of it this way. Always one must pay the price. The price we've paid to be such good thinkers is that we are susceptible to thought addiction, which is the root cause of all addictions. We have become so thought addicted that we initially may not even be able to conceive of being alert and fully conscious without thinking. Except this is where those spontaneous moments of Zen I mentioned previously come in. They are a taste of living well, of living unbound, of living without the heavy burden of thought addiction. How do we get good at unbinding? How do we cultivate? The same way we get good at anything else worth doing, by practicing well. There's no shortcut, no magic bullet, no instant salvation. Practice aliveness awareness or some similar practice until you master it. If you do, you'll discover that you really are awake, that you really already are all you need to be to live well. The truth is that since you already are what you are, it takes no time whatsoever to realize your true nature, to enjoy insight into being, which is your essence. Realization is instantaneous. It occurs in a flash. However, it's likely to take a while practicing before you are really ready to let go of all thoughts and experience an initial awakening. The reason is that you'll keep trying to think your way to living well, which is impossible. Furthermore, once you really let go of all thoughts, it'll likely take more time for that insight to work its way fully into all your doings. The way to avoid spiritual materialism is to stop thinking about gaining something. Don't think about waking up. Don't compare your practicing to what you think others are doing. Don't keep evaluating your practice sessions. All that is just more thinking. Just focus all your attention single-mindedly on practicing. on aliveness, if aliveness awareness is your practice. When you notice that you are thinking, detach and refocus. It's that simple.